what I was saying earlier about the country appreciating the new value that this whole industry provides is that we've seen 2 administrations in a row who could not have been more different. We had President Trump and President Biden. Both are investing in meat processing. President Trump launched several programs. His administration oversaw that, the USDA. And then coming into the Biden administration, they announced nearly $1 billion commitment to support local meat processing.
Hello, me folks. Welcome back to the MeatsPad podcast. Today, we are in Des Moines, Iowa, here on the 83rd 83rd edition here at the AMP show here in Des Moines, Iowa. Very excited because we have a guest today, very knowledgeable on the area of grants and funding. They call it the Grandmaster. A lot of people call you the Grandmaster. Welcome, Alex Freeman.
Francisco, thank you so much for being here in Des Moines, first of all, and thank you for all that you're doing with your podcast. I think you do such an important service to our butchers and meat processors to give them the information you do, and I'm just privileged to be here, and I hope that our conversation is helpful to some people across the country today.
No, thank you for being here today, and so where we are today, and for those folks that haven't been able or haven't had a chance to come to any of the AMP shows, so it's a community. It's a meat processing community where they commingle and convene every year to know about the new either technologies, but also the new knowledge. So we just had a conversation with Chris Young on the Appendix A and B changes, that it's so important for meat processors in the meat industry. But I think one aspect that I will want to talk about, first of all, is I want to know more about you. You're the CEO of SmartLocker, and you got 2 companies, right?
That's right. Yeah. So we're running by CEO of SmartLocker and president and owner of Agriculture Grant Solutions, a meat processor grant writing firm focused on helping meat processors of every size, from 2 employees in a rehab shed in Idaho to some of the largest in the country outside of the top 4, working on helping them support their industry, grow their business, and find new markets through different incentive programs that are open to them.
And for the sake of time, we're going to focus on the latter. We're going to focus on the grant solutions.
Let's talk about free money.
There you go.
There we go. It's a little bit more complicated than that, and we'll get into it. But before we even talk grants, I have to just add one more note to the beginning and opening of our conversation and say that AMP is truly a life-changing opportunity for a lot of meat processors. Whether you've been in the industry for 40 years and have never somehow come across the organization or been involved, or if you've been in it for 40 days, you've got a new plant, you're cutting meat, things are off to a hot start for you, or if you're in the building phase even, I just cannot speak highly enough of Chris Young as a person. I'm so grateful that you guys got a chance to interview him. I can't wait to listen to that because I learned something every time I talk to Chris. And so Chris Young, the AMP team, they are just phenomenal people, great resources. They're here to serve the members of this group, and they really do believe in local meat and the mission set of your everyday butcher, and say, how can we make your life better? And I think Chris wakes up every day, to 100 phone calls from people, and he answers every single one of them, I'm sure. And his mission is, hey, I want to make your life better and serve you. So just if you're not involved in AMP, I highly encourage it.
Yeah, there's way more resources if you're involved in the program in the AMP community. How do you end up doing this? Tell me about your background and how. So before we get into the ins and out of how to get funding.
Yeah, absolutely. So I came from a background, born and raised here in Iowa, and was fortunate after I went to school to start working at the Department of Agriculture here for the state. And started in late 2019 and thought my job would be one thing. And then the COVID-19 pandemic broke out. Like we all, remember the sequence of events at the beginning of that pandemic. Nobody was sure what was going to happen as it related to our food and ag community. How could we keep businesses open? How could we support this increasingly important national security, food security issue? of meat processing. And so we had states around the country, and Iowa, thanks to the leadership of our governor, Kim Reynolds, and our Secretary of Agriculture, Mike Nag, was one of the first states in the country to launch a meat processor assistance program in tandem with a few other states kind of in the beef belt, who said, this is an issue that we want to focus on. And so Secretary Nag and the governor said, we need to support our local processors. Well, what we saw in our program and programs across the country was that meat processors were processing, right? They're in their businesses doing what we're expecting of them during COVID. And there's a lot of work to be done to take advantage of all these programs. And so after a few years, we said, how can we be even more helpful to meat processors? And that's how I ended up starting Agriculture Grant Solutions. Was instead of working with the Department of Agriculture, as privileged as I was to have that opportunity, we thought we can be even more impactful on the other side of this table, taking some burden off of our processors, putting together professional grants, professional financial assistance proposals, ad hoc proposals, local county development, tax incentives, all of that stuff. We can work with them on their end and let them cut meat and let us take care of that piece and win them the money that they deserve for the good work that they did to keep the country together and everybody fed during a hard time. And it's been a very rewarding chase and growth pattern for us.
So sometime is, okay, how do I make this sustainable? How can I make my business profitable, right?
Absolutely.
And there's a good opportunity for not them to spend a lot of time in just getting knowledge and getting on the internet. So have people like you who are the best in this to get that funding to be involved in the actual how do you say that, in the
proposal
proposal, correct.
Exactly.
So
Yep.
that's, I think that's sometimes, and I say that because I'm guilty of not letting go of stuff that sometimes is best if you have people in the team that are better than you to manage that. So
It's all about delegation during a time when we've seen the demand for local meat, as a kind of a philosophical point to make about the work that your listeners are doing every day. I really do think that the country has finally woken up and realized the value that they add to their community, to their grocery store, to their local families that they're feeding with a custom exempt order. No matter how they're cutting or distributing or selling, I think the pandemic finally let people realize that butchers matter, that local meat matters, that farmers are important, that steaks don't come from the grocery store. All of these things that, butchers had probably been very frustrated by for generations. For many years, the pandemic and everything that's happened since then has given a renewed sense of importance to the work that butchers do. So I hope that if you're a meat processor listening to this podcast, that you can wake up every day and feel a little bit better about the fact that the country appreciates you a little bit more now, right? And that families who eat meat appreciate you a little bit more. And we'll talk about fake meat, which I can't stand. But.
Yeah. Let's dive into the topic.
Yeah.
Hypothetically, I'm a meat processor and I want to get funding. What do I do?
Sure. So the process for obtaining a grant is a patient one. And no small part of our job at Agriculture Grant Solutions has been to field phone calls and emails and inbound communication, and then route people to the appropriate program. And so the first step, obviously, if you listen to me and you think that I'm a decent guy, you want to work with us or learn more, we offer free consultations. So you can reach out to us. I usually appreciate when people, if they reach out, rather than just saying, tell me if a grant's open, maybe include, a small note about the nature of your business. We're a small custom exempt shop looking to go USDA in the next 3 years. There's a grant program that the USDA came out with. It's opened 2 times now. We'll see if they continue it. I hope they do. The Inspection Readiness Grant. It's a great program for anybody who's an existing processor looking to up that inspection status to USDA or CIS level. So the first step in the grant process is to know what you don't know, and work with us in a consultation capacity. And we also don't always know everything. And so that's what our team does. We have researchers who sit around. They listen to a processor who comes and talks to us. We take their details and then go on the hunt for them for grants. And maybe it's a local program. Maybe their city has a Main Street revitalization program that If the meat processing shop happens to be downtown in a small community that's had some deindustrialization and they're looking to bring jobs back, there might be a program for you there that you don't even know about. So that's kind of the value, is that you can delegate over, do what I call just a brain dump on us, tell us everything you know about your own business, and then let us do the hard work, the lifting of finding you an opportunity. So that's step number one. We can go into as technical of details as you want about the various procedures, or what I would call the tactics, about securing a grant. They include the basics that our team, we handle all of this for our clients, setting up their accounts on these various websites. The government's great at some things, not so great at other things. I don't think they're particularly amazing at setting up websites. We've seen a lot of difficulties in the processing community around the SAM.gov and this Dun and Bradstreet transition. People were having challenges there. Their entity wasn't being found. All these things that our team says, wow, like that's stressful. Let us do that. Go back to the butcher shop and we'll work with you. And so there's a technical process.
Maybe not all of them from A to Z, but maybe like the main ones.
Okay, yeah. So step number one let's talk about federal grants, things like from the USDA. Step number one, reach out to us for a consultation, or if you already have a program in mind, look at the specific qualifications for the program and make sure that you qualify. If you have any questions, that's no small part of why we're here. The USDA also launched a technical assistance program to do a similar thing, and we're actually working in that program. We're one of the consultants answering questions through the technical assistance program. So reach out either directly to our company or to the TA program overall. Figure out what your goals are. Do you want to add slaughter capacity if you don't have it now? Have your project in mind. And then step number two is going to be understand if that program is open to get those websites set up, those accounts. And so for the federal grant process, we're looking at the SAM.gov account. But to make a SAM.gov, you need a login.gov. It's a password manager. It's simple, but also just kind of a frustrating hoop to jump through. So again, we can work on kind of helping people get through that preliminary process to then even be eligible to apply. And so that's kind of what I would say, if we're not going to go A to Z, but just the things that are universal there. It's that, hey, let's get your program goals identified, make sure that you're eligible, and then get your accounts set up. And then from there, it gets a little bit specific to the program about what you do next. You might need to conduct a feasibility study, and our team has been working on those with some consultants and qualified folks to get those drafted cheap and fast for people who need them. You might need, some environmental blueprint report or something like that, phase one analysis if it's a larger scale project. And so there it really is important, I think, to be working with people who appreciate the complexity of the grant process and appreciate the patience that goes into it to make sure that you're getting it right each step of the way for giving them exactly what they ask for. Exactly what they ask for. It's such a big thing in the grant process. If they ask you for, a piece of paper turned sideways with 11-point font, that's what you do. You got to follow those rules exactly in the process. So that's kind of another piece of overarching advice. Is read those rules close and nail them to a T. And that's what our team is really focused on, detail-oriented, doing it exactly right.
Absolutely. Because sometimes when you're on the daily job, sometimes getting the time aside to see, okay, I'm going to read this carefully, but you can help him out too on that. One of the things like from 2020, and since all pandemic, everyone knows, it's been a lot of funding available from that point on. As of July 2022, August 2022, how much money is available? How much funding is available for meat processors?
Yeah, so what I appreciate about what I was saying earlier about the country appreciating the new value that this whole industry provides is that we've seen two administrations in a row who could not have been more different. We had President Trump and President Biden. Both are investing in meat processing. President Trump launched several programs. His administration oversaw that, the USDA. And then coming into the Biden administration, they announced nearly $1 billion commitment to support local meat processing. That truly is, I think, a recognition of, the fact that we have two administrations in a row who will each do nearly $1 billion of support through various programs. Really does reflect the bipartisan consensus that meat processing is important. And so when we talk about some of the specific programs open now, we're a little bit between programs that have a very widespread interest, it looks like. But the two that are open now, we have the Meat Processing Intermediary Lending Program. And what that is, it's a loan program. Actually, the intermediary lender, so like a qualified lender, is actually receiving a grant from the government. And then in turn, using that to initiate a line of credit program, a revolving loan program to finance meat processing expansion projects. They can do that on very favorable terms, right? Near zero interest or low origination, whatever the lender's terms are, because they're getting that capital infusion with no strings attached from the government as a grant. And so it's a very unique program design. We haven't seen a lot of widespread adoption or people reaching out to us about it because they have set up a number of hoops that you need. You need to be a nonprofit or a public entity, a tribal entity, to even qualify to apply for the funds, or cooperative. So that's one of the programs open now. One of the things that I am really excited about is that we had the Meat Processing Expansion Program Round 1 earlier this year. It was a very complex application process. Applicants could get 20% of their project funded, up to $25 million. So you could have a very large project getting a substantial grant of up to $25 million at a 20% match rate. And I think the feedback that USDA got about that program was, thank you for launching this. It's very important. But if I'm a smaller, mid-sized crew, that application was a lot. It required a lot of input components, feasibility study, pro forma analysis, business plan. And I think with any luck, their round 2 MPEP that they've indicated will come out sometime in the late summer. Hopefully that will be a little bit more small to mid-scale friendly in terms of the application requirements and process. And so that will be something where I don't want to get anybody over my skis and start committing information because they haven't said much about what that program will specifically be. But I think we can reasonably expect some life-changing amounts of money to continue to be available for meat processors through that program and some of the others, like the value-added producer grant if you're involved in livestock and working. That's an excellent opportunity to bring in a value-added operation if you're looking at starting a meat plant or partnering with one. The value-added producer grant is something that we can work on or that people are eligible for that can be substantial. Another thing to note would be as we look at the inspection readiness program, we're expecting some award announcements here in September, October. The program is closed for applications, but I'm sure they got a record number this year. The USDA did a nice job continuing to publicize it to the best of their ability, as did we. And so we'll see. Those are up to $200,000 in awards for use on construction, equipment, expansion, anything that has kind of a twofold approach of, hey, we want to expand our business, cut more meat, but importantly, we also want to improve our inspection readiness. And so that program really did, I think we dealt with a lot of people in the first round who were rejected because they didn't quite understand the dual nature of the requirements around the budgeting. And so our team, part of the grant process is, can we work with you to consult on that budget and make sure that whatever expenses you've got, because I promise we've dealt with 300 meat processors across the United States and 45 states. We've seen some pretty intense Christmas lists from our meat processing community about what they need done. And when a grant comes open, it's so important to sit down with somebody who really understands how that thing is going to be scored. How are those scores being tabulated? And then taking your budget and making sure that the things you include in that budget are going to win you the most points in that grant application. It's very important. I heard a timer go off. I don't want to keep us longer than we have to.
No, that's fine. Just on that, because I got a wrap-up question, but following up on that, what are the typical things that can be funded?
Sure.
I mean, just an example of what cannot be funded and what is like the most common thing.
So we worked with, I think maybe a story or two is the best here. So we worked with a processor in Illinois who had a small store that had just started up, had about 1 head a day capacity, and they were looking to say, we want to hire some employees, potentially increase our slaughter capacity, and buy some equipment to facilitate that, and then add value at our retail store. And so we worked with them through the inspection readiness grant to secure a little bit of an area expansion to their slaughter floor, a little bit of an area expansion to their processing room, and then furnishing that processing area with some toys from the AMP show, some processing equipment. And so though that grant really did have each component to it. The MPEP program, for round one anyways.
What does that stand for, MPEP?
The Meat Processing Expansion Program.
Okay.
Sorry. And then the one that I just described out of Illinois, that was the Inspection Readiness Grant.
Okay.
So they received that $200,000 in exchange. They committed within 36 months they're going to be a USDA facility, hopefully selling meat in Wisconsin, Iowa, Missouri. I know I'll be buying it when they do. So that was that program. Now MPEP, the Meat Processing Expansion Program, they really allowed them to kind of open the door a little bit more. And there were some things in the MPEP program related to, even more construction intensive work, site design and architectural related things.
Okay.
That people, the way that you calculated your project budget was a little bit of threading a needle about what expenses could count towards grant funds and what could only be counted towards the total project budget, but not
But tangible
be funded
things.
by the grant.
So architectural things.
Yeah, absolutely. Construction, design, expansion of a processing. We work down in the southwest of the United States with a very large mid-scale group who is doing further processing on boxed beef products. And we worked with them to install a packaging line or propose a packaging line. That's another opportunity. Anything related to the actual process of taking meat from, it's whatever form they're getting it in to the processing or packaging phase.
The final product.
Yeah, exactly. There's often a good opportunity to use one of the programs we've talked about today to fund that sort of thing as well.
I try to be very optimistic, but also tend to be very realistic. How many people out of 10, let's say, that apply for this type of funding get the actual funding?
So the grant programs from the USDA have varying amounts of funding allocated to them, and sometimes that interest doesn't always line up with how much money they have available. And so the Inspection Readiness Grant, I think the first year they had a decently high rejection rate.
Like how many? How much?
I'd have to. So I don't think they came out with that because I don't think they wanted to publicize.
But from your
too much,
experience, if you were to give a number, because I'm a processor, I want to know. Okay, if it's 2 out of 100
Sure.
who get the funding, well,
if it's a lottery, we're not gonna do it, right? And so some of the key part, we've got 95+% acceptance rate on all of the grants that we've done, and we're in that 95+% rate because we're following step by step, putting professional applications together.
Wow.
The overall program acceptance rates can be as low as 50 to 70%, or even lower, depending on how competitive it is, how many applications they get, how much money they've got.
So bottom line is, if you're trying to get funding, come to you because we've
done a good job. We've done a good job,
good.
And we're going to continue doing that. We're going to continue to win funds at a substantially. There's never been a program where we didn't clip our nearly 95% plus acceptance rate, just because we've said every single thing that comes out, we want to do it the best that we can and put a professional application together. We've dealt with a lot of folks who've been rejected in the first round, work with us in a second round of a program, and end up winning it. And it's nothing against them. This is a terrifying process, and I'm just very blessed to have the background of being familiar with this aspect of it. I always tell our processors, please don't expect me to show up to your processing plant and be a very good butcher, because I'm not sure I know about the process, but just the same way. It's like we've learned grants, and we want to help people tap into them. And so that's really what we talked about, I think, before we started recording, that delegation of labor.
Yeah.
So
yeah. How can people contact you? And I would like to put that description on the video on YouTube, to put that, and also on the podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, so that people can reach out to you.
Great. So for our SmartLocker USA software, that's a simple butcher platform that helps people facilitate online orders, cut sheets, customer texting and emails. You can reach out at smartlockerusa.com. If you're interested in working with us on any of the financial assistance or grants, Agriculture Grant Solutions is our company name, agriculturegrantsolutions.com. We have an email address. We have a web intake form. And also you can catch us at AMP if you happen to be here and this comes out during the time. We're really excited to talk to you. A lot of new potential clients at the booth. So the last thing I want to leave with, too, is that because of the nature of our podcast, we've talked so much about meat today. But if you are somebody who's maybe a meat processor, but you also have other food and agriculture interests or other businesses that you're involved in, reach out to us, because we work with all kinds of rural businesses and rural stakeholders. It's really a big passion that we have, is we want rural communities, small businesses, to make sure that they are not missing out on what's out there for them. And so if you're a meat processor, livestock, other types of row crop agriculture, it's still worth a conversation just to get to know us and see what we can do for you.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sure this a lot of information that you provided with us today, and this is good. This is a platform for you guys listening to this podcast to be aware of, and these resources that you can maybe utilize in the future or right now.
Absolutely.
Thank you a lot. We'll see you guys. We'll continue here on the 83rd edition here, the AMP show. And thank you, Alex, for being here today.
So excited about it. Thank you so much, Francisco.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.